Like, what if I told you that in 2025, looking poor might be your greatest asset? While the world chases clout, the truly wealthy are blending in, building empires in silence. They know the power of camouflage, the leverage of being underestimated, and the safety of staying off the flashy radar. Inflation punishes the loud, surveillance targets the bold, and vanity keeps people broke. But control, true control, belongs to those who don't need to prove anything. Looking poor isn't weakness. It's a strategy, a mindset, a weapon. And the ones who master it, they don't just survive, they dominate, quietly, relentlessly. Everyone's trying to be seen right now. Flashy cars, luxury clothes, designer watches, they're not just accessories anymore, they're declarations. People want to signal success before they've even built it. And that's exactly why looking poor in 2025 is such a power move. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about strategically choosing invisibility in a world obsessed with visibility. When the majority is shouting for attention, silence becomes your competitive edge. Think about it. When you look broke, people don't expect you to be the one holding the cards. They overlook you, ignore you, even dismiss you. And that's where the leverage begins. Because while they're distracted by surface level status, you're building something deeper. The truth is, real money doesn't need to prove itself. It's quiet, it's consistent, and it's usually dressed in worn jeans and old sneakers, not tailored suits and flashy branding. There's a concept I love, playing the gray man. It's originally a tactical idea, blending into your environment so you're unnoticed, unremarkable, undisturbed. But in business, it's genius. Looking poor gives you access to places others can't go without being flagged. You can enter a room and observe before you act. You can talk to competitors without them realizing they're giving intel to a shark. You can negotiate deals without the price hike that comes when you look like money. This isn't about hiding who you are. It's about not giving your power away before the play. Most people equate looking rich with being respected, but I've found it often has the opposite effect. When you show up dripping in wealth, people see a mark. They start calculating what they can get from you. Vendors raise prices, partners ask for more, opportunists swarm, and suddenly your image becomes a liability. Meanwhile, the person who looks like they're scraping by, they slip through undetected, making moves, collecting equity, buying real estate, building revenue streams. They're free because they're invisible, and that freedom, it's priceless, especially now in 2025 with everything moving so fast. AI, surveillance, economic shifts. You don't want to be the one shining under the spotlight. The world has changed. Wealth isn't about how much you can spend, it's about how much control you have. Control over your time, control over your decisions, control over who knows your next move. Looking poor gives you that control, because no one's watching you closely enough to interfere. I've met millionaires who show up in cargo shorts and ride the subway, not because they can't afford better, but because they understand something deeper. When you don't look like money, you can walk through any environment and gather information, build trust, and make unfiltered decisions. You're not playing defense. You're not explaining yourself. You're simply operating. And here's the thing, when you stop chasing the need to be perceived as rich, your energy gets redirected. You start investing instead of spending. You start building instead of broadcasting. You stop buying things to impress strangers and start acquiring things that pay you forever. Every dollar you don't spend on looking wealthy becomes a soldier in your army of assets. Every time you walk away from flexing, you move closer to freedom. It's easy to underestimate the value of being underestimated, but in my world, I've seen it change everything. When people don't know what you're capable of, they can't prepare for you. They don't protect their weak spots. They talk freely. They drop their guard. And that's when you find your edge. It's when you can make your move with precision and surprise. So if you're walking around in 2025 trying to convince people you've made it, you're wasting energy. The smartest play is to look like you haven't. Not because you're hiding, but because you're hunting. Not because you're lacking, but because you're loaded. And no one knows it. The real flex this year isn't the car you drive or the shoes you wear. It's being able to walk into any room and know you can buy the building while everyone else assumes you work security. Everyone wants to be seen right now. Flash, clout, and status are the currencies of this new social economy. People are dressing for TikTok, speaking for Instagram, and buying things not for utility, but for applause. But here's the thing. When everyone's chasing attention, the smart ones are chasing leverage. And to get real leverage, sometimes you have to look like you've got nothing. Looking poor, or even just deliberately average, is the backdoor strategy to power in 2025. When you don't look like a threat, people let you in. They drop their guard, they tell you the truth. They offer you deals with fewer filters. If you walk into a meeting dripping in brands, driving a G-Wagon, and name-dropping your wins, people assume you're either too expensive or too arrogant to work with. But walk in like you're scrappy, focused, and humble, and suddenly you're someone they want to bet on. They see potential. And more importantly, they don't feel like they're competing with you. That's when access opens up. I've seen this play out 100 different ways. There's a certain kind of investor who never shows up flashy. They wear old jeans and sit in the back of the room taking notes. No one notices them until the deal's already been made, and by then, they've acquired what they came for quietly and at a discount. That's the art of looking undercapitalized but being overprepared. The mistake most people make is trying to prove their worth too soon. But in this economy, power is asymmetrical. You gain more by saying less, showing less, and letting others underestimate you. When you look poor, you get intel, and intel in business is gold. People talk more openly when they think you're not a player. They give you the real numbers, not the pitch deck fluff. You hear their frustrations, their insecurities, their fears, because they think you're just observing, not hunting. But you are hunting, you're studying, you're positioning, and when the time is right, you strike, not as a show-off, but as a strategist. That's a move no one sees coming. We're in a weird moment where perception is more manipulated than ever. AI is generating synthetic influence. Social media has created a class of digital peacocks, bright, loud, and easy to spot. But here's the paradox. The louder they are, the more obvious their game. And the more obvious your game, the more defensive others become. You can't close real deals in that environment. People don't trust flash anymore. They trust familiarity, humility, and consistency. Looking poor, or at least not overly polished, signals those things. But this isn't about playing weak or shrinking. It's about staying light and agile. When you don't have to maintain an image, you can pivot faster. You're not burdened by expectations or the pressure to impress. That freedom is a strategic advantage. Think about all the overhead that comes with trying to look successful. Design, clothes, luxury, cars, high-end events, constant content creation. All of that takes time, money, and attention away from the real work. Meanwhile, the person wearing the same hoodie 3 days in a row is buying up cash-flowing assets and building systems that don't need an audience. Looking poor also lets you move between classes and spaces more easily. You can sit with blue-collar business owners and learn how they built seven-figure companies with grit and process. Then the next day, you can show up at a private equity meeting and ask questions no one else dares to ask because you actually know how the people on the ground operate. That fluidity only comes when you're not fixated on projecting wealth, but on understanding where it comes from. Here's what it comes down to. In 2025, looking poor is one of the smartest branding decisions you can make. Not for social reasons, but for strategic ones. It gives you access, leverage, freedom, and information. It shields you from assumptions and traps. It aligns you with builders, not performers. It forces you to focus on real assets instead of image. And ultimately, it keeps you underestimated just long enough to win quietly. The less you show, the more they reveal. You know what's wild? In 2025, inflation isn't just something economists debate on charts. It's personal. It's not theoretical. It's felt. It shows up in your grocery bill, in your rent, in that tiny moment of hesitation before you swipe your card at a gas station. And here's the kicker. The people getting hit the hardest are the ones who look like they've already made it. The ones driving luxury cars with 5-figure loan payments, wearing designer brands financed on credit, living in houses they barely own. It's not the actual poor who are struggling the most. It's the people pretending not to be. The truth is, inflation is like a heat-seeking missile, and it locks onto flash. The more you flex, the more exposed you are. You're showing the world and the systems behind the curtain that you're a high consumption player. You've made yourself a target. You're giving away all your leverage for a bit of admiration from strangers who won't be there when you need to make payroll, cover an emergency, or ride out a recession. And the worst part? You start playing the game not just with your money, but with your mindset. You become addicted to looking like you're winning, which means you stop doing the very things that make you actually win. The ones who survive and thrive in this kind of climate aren't the ones performing success. They're the ones building it in silence. Looking poor, or at least choosing not to look rich, is a strategy, a damn good one. Because when you stop signaling success to the world, you stop paying a premium for it. No overpriced clothes, no inflated rent for the right zip code, No monthly payments just to impress someone you haven't even met yet. You reduce your overhead and increase your options. You start owning your time, your focus, your outcomes. You stop running on a hamster wheel built out of appearances and start building equity, real equity, in businesses, assets, ideas. People think freedom is about getting rich. It's not. It's about reducing your dependency. Looking poor helps you do that. It lowers your burn rate. It gives you the power to say no. That ugly little car you drive, it's a yes to 6 extra months of reinvestment into your business. That outdated phone, it's a yes to another year of runway while others go broke flexing on TikTok. It's not that you can't afford the nicer things. It's that you've redefined what nice even means. In 2025, nice is no longer about labels or luxury. It's about margin, cushion, control. It's about how long you can last if the music stops. And let's be honest, sometimes it does stop. Businesses crash, markets shift, governments tighten. In those moments, looking rich becomes the worst decision you could have made because now you've got pressure to maintain a life you never truly owned. But when you've chosen the path of invisibility, of quiet power, you've already inoculated yourself against that pressure. You're not trying to uphold an illusion, you're working a strategy. And that strategy builds real resilience. There's also something deeply psychological about looking poor by choice. It rewires your brain. When you reject the urge to show off, you stop chasing dopamine hits from applause and start chasing returns from your decisions. You start stacking skills, not sneakers. You hunt for undervalued deals instead of overpriced validation. That shift right there is what separates those who survive a downturn from those who own it. You stop consuming like everyone else and start creating like the ones no one sees coming. What's beautiful is that people will underestimate you. They'll assume you're small time, not worth watching. That's your edge. You're the ghost in the system, no pressure to keep up. No need to explain yourself. You're just quietly building, compounding, and collecting advantages in the shadows. And one day, maybe years later, they'll look up and realize you lapped them 10 times over. Not with noise, not with a splash, but with precision and patience. So here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. In this economy, the smartest move isn't to shine, it's to shield. Not to perform wealth, but to preserve it. That's the new game. And the ones who master it, they'll win, while everyone else burns out trying to keep up with a story they can't afford to keep telling. You don't need to look rich to be powerful. You just need to stop looking for permission. Everyone's obsessed with being seen right now. The right outfit, the right watch, the right car, the perfect shot for Instagram, the slick intro for TikTok. It's all a performance. And here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Looking rich today is just a new kind of costume. And it's one that costs you more than it gets you. See, the people who win in this game, they're not the ones broadcasting success. They're the ones hiding it. There's a strange power in being underestimated. When people think you're not a player, they don't guard the board. They speak more freely. They show their hands. They drop their prices. They assume you don't know what they know. So they offer the real story without realizing it. And when you look poor, or at least like you're not trying to flex, you get access to places, conversations, and opportunities the flashy never see. You're the ghost in the room, but you're also the one holding the playbook. You can ask better questions without ego. You can say, I'm not sure. What do you think? Without anyone getting defensive or trying to one-up you. People love being the smartest in the room. Let them. That illusion costs them leverage. Meanwhile, you're collecting data, watching behavior, and positioning yourself for the move. That's not manipulation. It's discipline. It's the art of choosing long-term advantage over short-term applause. Because when you look like you don't have much, people let you get close. They assume you're safe. That's when you learn what's really going on. And by the time they realize you're not just some kid with old shoes, you're the one cutting the checks, it's too late for them to adjust. There's something about silence and subtlety that multiplies your options. Loud people live in cages of expectation. They have to keep up the performance or lose status. Quiet operators can pivot, disappear, adapt. They don't need the world to know what they're doing. They need only to win. And in 2025, winning doesn't look like it used to. It's not the watch, the car, the corner office, or even the big speech. Winning is peace, control, optionality. It's being able to walk into a room and not need anyone to know your name. You walk in with leverage, not luggage. You ever see how the real killers in business dress? Hoodies, work boots, t-shirts. They don't need to prove anything. You can always tell who has money by how little they try to look like they do. But beyond the aesthetic, there's psychology here. Looking poor keeps your hunger alive. When you're constantly polishing your image, you start to believe in it too much. You forget what got you here. You lose that scrappy energy. You stop thinking like an operator and start thinking like an influencer. The guy with a beat-up truck who owns 50 rental properties, he knows something the guy with a rented Lambo and a six-figure debt doesn't. Looking rich too early is a trap. It locks you into the race. It invites judgment, pressure, and worst of all, entitlement. You start buying things to feel like you deserve them. That's how you lose the game, one dopamine hit at a time. But if you flip the script, if you purposely dress it down, play it quiet, keep your cards close, you become dangerous. Not in the reckless, flashy way, but in the cold, calculated, strategic way. You stop trying to impress people and start building things. You invest more, you read more, you learn more, you stay lean, mentally and financially. And because nobody sees you coming, you get to move without resistance. Everyone else is playing checkers. You're playing chess with half the board hidden. So yeah, looking poor in 2025 isn't just some clever strategy. It's survival. It's how you move without being targeted, build without being taxed by distraction, and grow without being dragged into the noise. And eventually, when the world starts to notice what you've built, you won't need to explain how you did it. They'll know. In 2025, one of the most overlooked power moves is learning how to disappear in plain sight. Not in a literal sense. I'm not talking about running off grid or moving to a cabin in Montana. I mean intentionally choosing to be low profile in a world that's addicted to visibility. We're in an era where everything is captured, tracked, logged, and judged. The more you show, the more the system sees you, and the more vulnerable you become. That's why looking poor isn't just a choice anymore, it's a strategy. We're living in what I call the surveillance economy. Every purchase you flash, every lifestyle image you post, every luxury you parade is cataloged by the algorithm, by corporations, by governments, and yes, by predators. Your life becomes data, and the more data you throw out there, the more exposed you are. That luxury car, it's a beacon. That Rolex, it's a red flag. That Ocean View Instagram post, it tells people not just where you are, but who you are, what you value, and how to get to you. Most people think the threat is just digital privacy, like, oh no, Google knows my shoe size. But the real danger is that when you present yourself as someone who has wealth, you automatically attract two things: people who want a piece of it, and systems designed to tax or trap it. Bureaucracies, lawsuits, audits, targeted marketing, even social backlash. All these things have become more aggressive and precise, and they don't look for the humble. They look for the highlighted. The people who win now are those who can decouple their actual wealth from their perceived status. Those who look broke while owning cash-flowing assets. Those who wear basic sneakers but hold equity in 3 laundromats. Those who eat lunch at the taco stand but collect rent from 6 tenants. Because the real flex in 2025 is owning without showing. And here's the kicker. It's not just about protection. It's about leverage. When people think you're average, they treat you like you're average. That sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually an incredible advantage. You get real feedback. You hear what people actually think because they're not posturing or performing. You become invisible to the vultures, but visible to the real. You can sit in any room, walk into any deal, and never have to prove anything. You're not distracted by keeping up appearances. You're focused on keeping assets. There's also this layer no one talks about, the psychological weight of looking rich. It's exhausting. Once you start, you have to keep it up. The luxury car has to be cleaned, maintained, insured. The designer clothes have to be updated. The lifestyle becomes a prison. You're spending money just to maintain an image that doesn't serve you. It's one thing to invest in experiences or assets, but when your money's going to status, you're losing the real game. Now contrast that with someone who looks poor, or better yet, just unremarkable. They walk lighter. They don't spend emotional energy worrying about being judged for not wearing the latest watch or carrying the latest bag. They're free to use their mental bandwidth for bigger plays, like negotiating a seller finance deal, researching tax strategies, or learning how to hire smart. And here's the irony. By not trying to look rich, they often get richer because they're making decisions that serve long-term freedom instead of short-term flex. This isn't about shaming success or pretending to be broke. It's about realizing that perception is a currency. And in 2025, the smart move is to spend that currency wisely. Show too much, and you're targeted. Show too little, and you blend in just enough to move how you want, when you want, with no unnecessary noise. You don't owe anyone proof that you're winning. The goal isn't to look wealthy, it's to be free. And freedom in this era belongs to the invisible. You know what's funny? In 2025, the people who truly own everything, the businesses, the cash flow, the freedom, don't look like they have a dime. They're not the ones on Instagram with the designer sneakers and flashy watches. They're not rolling up in leased cars with sky-high payments or maxed out credit cards. In fact, you'd probably pass them on the street and assume they were struggling. And that's exactly the point. Because wealth, real wealth, is no longer about how much you spend. It's about how much you control. Control over your time. Control over your calendar. Control over where you live, how you work, and who you answer to. And that control gets easier to hold on to when you stop trying to signal to the world that you've made it. See, looking poor isn't about pretending or playing small. It's about choosing leverage over vanity. When you choose not to perform wealth, you preserve power. You don't invite unnecessary scrutiny. You don't attract the parasites, the lawsuits, the sudden tax audits, or the people who only show up when they think you have something to offer. You get to move through life with less friction and more focus. And in this new economy where attention is a currency and privacy is a luxury, that's a competitive advantage. I've watched millionaires and multimillionaires do this over and over. They live in modest homes, drive 10-year-old trucks, and wear the same 2 pairs of jeans every week. They aren't broke. They're playing the long game. Every dollar they don't spend on status gets reinvested into businesses, assets, real estate, equity deals, or time with their families. They understand something most people don't. You don't need to look rich when you own the things other people are trying to rent for appearances. Looking poor gives you breathing room. It frees you from the treadmill of always needing to one-up yourself. Once you start flexing for the crowd, it becomes a full-time job. You buy a nice car, now you need a nicer one. You wear a name brand jacket, now people expect you in full designer. And the moment you can't keep up, they judge. You're only as valuable as your last purchase. That's a trap. When you look poor, you buy back your optionality. You're not locked into high overhead, social pressure, or constantly maintaining a false identity. You can pivot, you can say no, you can disappear for 6 months to build something massive without anyone asking what happened to the lifestyle. You build in the dark while everyone else performs in the spotlight. And when you finally emerge, you don't just have clout, you have ownership. There's also a massive psychological advantage here. When you stop trying to impress others, your energy gets rerouted into building for yourself. You stop chasing quick dopamine hits and start chasing long-term wins. You stop spending hours curating an image and start spending hours learning, strategizing, investing. You get obsessed with value, not vanity, and value compounds. Vanity burns out. There's a reason the wealthiest people in the world today are increasingly invisible. They don't need external validation. Their balance sheets speak for them. Their decisions reflect discipline. They've cracked the code. Anonymity is freedom. Stealth is leverage. Looking poor is a tool, not because it makes you less, but because it makes you untouchable. Let everyone else burn out trying to look like a success. While they're busy signaling, you're stacking. While they're over-leveraged, you're liquid. While they're performing for likes, you're operating for legacy. That's the real game. That's where real power lives. And the wildest part? When you finally do reach that point of total control, the kind where you can go anywhere, do anything, buy whatever you want, you'll realize you don't even need to show it because you'll already know the loudest in the room usually owns the least. So play it smart. Let them think you're broke. You'll be too busy becoming unbreakable.